Hey guys, welcome to Code Tech Talk. My name is Carlos Cucalon, and today we're working on the final video, third video for the responsive navigation tutorial. And the first video we cover over how to do the HTML or markup for this tutorial. The second step was the CSS and kind of how we worked from going from mobile to tablet to desktop and the MIDI queries behind them. And then now what we're going to do is we're just going to add some of the Spark and make it work using JavaScript, and specifically speaking, we're going to use jQuery to add some classes and make sure that the elements that we're working with can open and close. So our final solution should look something very similar to this, which is going to be you click on the navigation, drop down falls off. If you go back to your desktop, you can also close and open up your drop down by clicking on it. And then same thing for your tablet, you can close and open the menu, close and open the drop down as well. So we have this working here on our final solution. So let's go ahead and add the JavaScript or the jQuery to make this work. Just to let you know, I did preload on the initial files that you pulled out from GitHub. I did preload jQuery and I have version 3.3.1. If you want to, feel free to check out further if there's any newer versions by the time that you're watching this video. However, if you do set this up and something doesn't work, just make sure that there's no issues with some selectors that may have been deprecated or whatnot. So let's go ahead and get this started. In our HTML responsive navigation folder, we have also a JS folder, and inside of that JS folder we have app.js, and here's where we're going to add our selectors, or our JavaScript. So one of the things that I like to do anytime that I use jQuery is use this function preloading. So what this does, it lets the document load completely, our HTML and our CSS kind of load first before loading any activity using JavaScript, so that nothing gets delayed, there's no issues, and we make sure that anything that we're trying to interact with is loaded on the page before we actually start trying to do something. One of the tests that I do anytime that I set up a JavaScript on the page is use an alert, something like hello world. And by doing this alert, it kind of lets me know that the JavaScript is selected, and it shows that, for example, I didn't mess up something in the typing. I usually do mess up stuff as I'm typing, and especially if I'm teaching. So I usually use an alert, hello world, or something along the lines of that kind of helps give me more information and know, okay, this code should be working right now. So now that I've gotten rid of that, again, I saved it again. That's why it popped up twice. So let me go ahead and get rid of that hello world. And let's go ahead and start setting up our selectors. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a variable of menu toggler. If you have been following us with this tutorial, you see that sounds very similar to our HTML button called navbar toggler. So if you want to name it something different like navbar toggler, feel free to do that. I'm just calling it menu toggler. Makes it a lot easier for me to remember, and it's a lot shorter than navbar toggler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use this selector. If you've used jQuery in the past, you know that you will use that $, which is a reference for jQuery, the open parenthesis, double quote, and then we're going to use the same thing as a CSS selector for our navbar toggler. Again, I try to be as specific as I can possibly be. So let's go ahead and make sure that we select our nav element, and then make sure that we let it know that it's a button, so that if in the future we were to create another navbar toggler for something else, that it doesn't get selected using this jQuery here. So let's go ahead and use that nav and then button. So then we have this toggler here, and then we know that we are selecting this element. So what we're going to do, if you want to, you can, what we're going to do, is we're actually going to create an element or an action, or not, an event to this menu toggler. So what we're going to do is select our menu toggler. And then we're gonna select set up our function of on. So as soon as this document loads, then it's gonna look for this menu toggler and it's gonna be listening for an action. And the action we want the page to listen for is going to be the click action. So anytime that we click on it, then it's going to do something. Then here we're gonna set up a function just so that we can isolate it and then work on something inside. So once we have this menu, right, and we click on it, then something should happen in this function, and we're going to pass an event through the function variable here to make sure that there's that we actually prevent some things that we don't want it to happen, and I'll explain that in just a little bit. So the first thing that I like to do, especially when we're handling like buttons or handling something like anchor tags, is make sure that we prevent the default function. So if it's a button, maybe has something like submit or something like that, I wanted to prevent that button to actually submit something. Or if it's an anchor tag, to actually function like an anchor tag and take you somewhere else, or try to take you somewhere else. So the first thing that I like to do is use the E, or for the event, which I have right here. That's what the E references for. And then a default value that we have in JavaScript, which is prevent default. And again, this will prevent the button to behave like a button. So here we just want it as an element that we can click on. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create another variable inside of this that we're going to call it navigation. And then here we're going to make sure that we select this. This in jQuery actually pertains to this menu toggler that we're talking about. So this menu toggler specifically, if we were to have other menu togglers within navigation, then when you click on that menu toggler, then it would say that will be the reference to this. If you want to, I'm actually going to have some articles in the description of the video if you want to read a little bit further on what this is and any of these jQuery properties that we're setting up right now as well. So here we're going to select the attribute. If you remember when we set up our HTML, I told you that we were going to use this data target, and we're going to use these, and we're going to select our navigation here. That's why we use the # and then main navigation. And now we're actually going to be calling this data target so that we can get the value inside of this data target by using the attribute property. So here we're going to do that, and we're going to set up our data target. And then here, for example, let's go ahead and do another alert so that you can see what's happening on the page. So now that we're here, if I click on it, you'll see that it gives me the data target, which is main navigation. And that's what we have right here, right? Which is going to help us select this ID up here on the page. So let's go ahead and go back to the page. By the way, another way that you can also test this without actually showing an alert on the page and letting kind of your users know that you're testing on something is using something like console.log. And then if you do console.log and you click in here, nothing happens on the screen. But if you were to inspect the page and click under console, then you'll see that anytime that I click on it, it kind of gives me this main navigation selector, and it also tells me what line triggered this console.log, which is line 7. And if you look at the code itself, it's also line 7 from what I'm seeing on the screen here. So again, that's just another way that you can test that your jQueries or your JavaScript is working properly, and another way for you kind of test what your selectors are and whatnot. So here what we're going to do is we're going to select this element, again doing the $ open parentheses, and we're going to call it, use the variable called navigation. And then here we can do something like toggle. So by using toggle, what this does is what we're doing with this simple JavaScript or this simple jQuery is anytime that I click on this menu toggler, which is going to be this button right here, we're going to select it. And then we're going to prevent any default function that that button might have had. And then that is going to give us the value of this navigation ID, which is the data target right here. So it's going to be the main navigation, which is going to be the ID of the collapse, navbar collapse, or the main menu. And then the next thing that we're doing here is selecting it and then using the word toggle. What toggle does is it toggles. Let me show you right here. So I'm going to inspect, and I would like for you to take a really quick look right here on this section right here, because there's going to be a style that is going to get added. So when you click on it, you see that style display block got added. If I click on it again, then display none. So then what toggle does, it adds a show or a hide using styles directly on the page. If you remember how CSS works, you have three ways of using CSS and that affects a page. One of them is using an external file, just like kind of what we use with our style.css. The second one is to actually do it under the header section. Here we can actually add a style, or we can do it inline. So the closer it is to the element, the higher that it has the power to affect it. So anything that is inline style will have a higher effect than something that is, for example, on the header, of the page, HTML page, or higher than for example, the external file that we're using the style for. However, I don't really like using this display none or display block, and the reason why is because I have no control over it. Okay, so what I like to do in my case is to actually give it a class instead of actually forcing it using the inline style options. So what I'd like to do instead is use toggle, and then toggle class. So if this class exists, then remove it. If it doesn't exist, add it. So go ahead and let's take a look at the page again. And again, I'm inspecting this so that you can see it as we're working on it. If you look at it right here in this section where it says collapse, navbar collapse, when I click on the button, it adds a class of open because it didn't have the class again. But now that it has this class of open or class modifier, then I can click on it again. And now what that's going to do is going to remove it again. When it's not there and I click on it, it opens it. If it's there and I click on it again, then it hides it. Now, your question might be, well, that's doing nothing to my screen, right? So I keep on clicking on this, but the navigation is not opening or showing or hiding, right? So, and the problem is because we haven't added any CSS to it. So let's go ahead and go back to our navigation. And then here, right under our nav, let's go ahead and do nav dot or class of open. And then let's go ahead and do display block. And then let's go ahead and give it a value of important. We wanted to make sure that anytime that an element has a class of open, then it's going to make sure that it displays block. So now that we've done that, right, let's go ahead and take a look at the page again. If you have this main navigation, right, and when we click on it, now it shows, and now you see that we have the class open right here. If we click on this, it hides, and then it also, again, now we have the option to show and to hide using just CSS here. Something nifty, if you want to get brownie points on this, will be cool if you use some CSS selectors, CSS animations as well, to maybe make it fade in and fade out. That would be super cool if you get a chance to do that. Now, the next thing that we need to do is do the same thing with the drop down menu. So just like kind of what we did with our main navigation in our toggler, we need to now select that drop down menu so that we can open and close that drop down menu. So let's go ahead and go back to our code right here. And it's going to be the drop down toggle, and that's what we're going to select. So let's go ahead and create this. Let's go ahead and do let drop down toggler, and then equals, and then it's going to be an anchor tag nav link drop down toggle. make sure that we have that selector. Something cool that you can also do to make things easier as you're reading them is maybe align your equal signs and then your selectors. And again, that's just elevates you a little bit more as far as in the eyes of other developers and gets you some respect points as well. And again, makes it easier for you to read and kind of see your selectors in there. We could have also done a comma here and then use drop down toggler down here like that. But anyway, I don't need that many points. So let's go ahead and we're just going to keep it let drop down toggler, keep it very simple. And we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to do drop down toggler. And then we're going to listen for, right? We're going to actively listen for a click. And then we're going to set up a function here with an event that we're going to pass down. If we click on an anchor tag, it will try to take you somewhere else and make you navigate outside of whatever you're working on. So we definitely, especially for an anchor tag, we have to use the ePrevent default in our site anytime that we're using JavaScript or jQuery. So the next thing that we're going to do is, again, we're going to select our this, right? We're here. We don't need to get a data target. What we're going to do is, if you look at this navigation here, what we're doing is we're clicking on this data drop down toggle, and then we want this UL right here to show for us, right? So if you see, this is what we're trying to do. Select. Now, if you notice, we have this anchor, and then right next to it is an unordered list. In that unordered list, you notice that we don't have any other unordered list, any other elements. So these are siblings to each other. So what we're going to do is select our this, which again is this drop-down toggler here, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to select our siblings, and then we're going to toggle class open. Kind of what we did with this one up here. So now anytime that we click on the main navigation and then we click on the drop down, then it will show right here. So then now this will open and close, open and close. And then if we go to our tablet version, again, open and close, open and close. And then if we go now to our desktop version, now we can open and close as well. So we have these options right here. So this is something nifty. So for example, if we were to now duplicate this on order list here, now we have two drop downs. Now you see that we can trigger each one of our drop downs independently from each other here, right? And then again, as well, on your navigation for your tablet, again, it selects that drop down rather than all drop downs. And that's what this does for you, right? So one drop down only displays, the other drop down doesn't display. So based on whatever element that you click on. So now that we've done this, we've completed this tutorial. We've worked through the HTML, we've worked through the CSS, and now we've worked through the JavaScript. We're going through the whole creation of the elements, why we selected specific elements within HTML5, why we did the way that we actually worked on, which was working from mobile to tablet to desktop in our CSS, and now just using jQuery, very simple jQuery, to be able to do this open and close toggler as well. We could go more advanced where maybe we can select, say, one drop down toggler, and then if we click on another one, then maybe the other one closes down, and that can take a little bit more. But just for a simple baseline responsive navigation, I think this is a great starting point, and hopefully gives you some ideas on how to use both HTML, CSS, and jQuery to create maybe other components, other elements within your page. And hopefully this is a starting point for any other developments that you make. As always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to look at leave them in the comments below. If you like the videos, like them, subscribe. And then if you have questions or you want to see the initial files or the solutions, feel free to go to our GitHub account account and subscribe there as well, and then pull down the files so that you can fork them over and pull them and be able to use them as well. So hopefully you guys like this tutorial. If you have questions or you like to see maybe different tutorials, feel free to leave comments below, and we'll try to accommodate as much as we have time for, to be able to show and to do the things that we want to do, and show maybe how to help maybe improve your code and why we do certain things. If maybe you want to do a QA or whatever it may be, feel free to leave that comment below, and then we'll figure it out together. But hopefully this tutorial was very helpful to you. Again, this is Carlos Cucalon with Code Tech Talk, and until the next time, I hope you guys have a happy coding. Goodbye.